Congresswoman McClellan to come on the program, and she's been kind enough to join us here as we go out to the WRVA Newsmaker Hotline. Let's welcome in U.S. Representative Jennifer McClellan, District 4, here in Virginia, as our special guest here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Are you enjoying the recess yet?
Well, I enjoy being home, yes, but it's, keeping busy as always. It's, we don't really rest during recess. We keep working.
I was going to ask, is it like summer break, or is it still work in the office, meeting with constituents and looking into things?
It's all of the above. Try to take a little bit of time because when we go back after Labor Day, it'll be a very heavy slog towards the end of the fiscal year, trying to avoid a government shutdown. So I think September and October are going to be very, very busy. So I may take 1 or 2 days, but I have a senior town hall meeting today. I have one next week, and getting around the district, talking to people, visiting the Chesterfield Courthouse, as you mentioned. And I like to spend my recess first telling my constituents, here's what's happening in Washington and why it affects you. Hear them tell me how it affects them, and then take that back to Washington, because I think sometimes inside the Beltway, people don't pause to think about how is what is happening impacting our communities back home. And a big part of my job is to be the voice of the people in the 4th District to say, hey, here's how your policies are impacting my day-to-day life.
See, that's why I think your district, Rob Whitman's district, Central Virginia, is so unique, because we're close enough that you could drive up to D.C., but we're far enough away that we don't get caught up in the Beltway. So I think that's why you have probably a unique position and a point of view of all the Congress people that serve up in Capitol Hill. So let's talk about your comments at Chesterfield County Courthouse. We played some of them over the last few days, but I wanted to get from you your thoughts on what you've seen, what you've learned, and your point of view when it comes to ICE officers within the courthouse.
Well, let me start. I always like to start where we can agree. And
Yes.
and I think there's broad agreement that our current immigration system is broken, that for over 30 years, Congress has not provided comprehensive immigration reform, and that we need to do that. But we need reform that is compassionate and that doesn't abandon American values of providing due process and treating everyone with dignity and respect, understanding that people are innocent until proven guilty. So what has disturbed me about the Trump administration's current immigration enforcement actions and what ICE is doing is it is betraying the American values of due process and compassion, particularly at Chesterfield. ICE is showing up at the General District Court. Now, General District Court is where traffic offenses and low-level misdemeanors are heard. So this is not, the felonies, the violent crimes, like that's all up in the circuit court. So this is General District Court, where people are coming to pay traffic fines, where they may be coming to, you might have, a trespassing case or something like that. And they're being detained and deported with no ability to prove whether or not they're a citizen. And when you combine that with what we've seen across the country, whether it is people who are literally being kidnapped off the street, put in a car, put on a plane in El Salvador. We know that there are American citizens and people lawfully present here who have been detained and deported with no ability to prove their citizenship. It is creating fear among immigrant communities, even among citizens who are afraid to come to the courthouse to seek justice for themselves, to comply with the law, or even to get marriage licenses. So when I hear people are not showing up to pay traffic fines or for their day in court for a traffic fine because they're afraid, am I going to be disappeared? People are afraid who are in violent domestic situations are afraid to call the police because they don't know if they or their partner could be detained, even if they're citizens. People are afraid to cooperate with police as witnesses or show up and testify in court because they don't know what's going to happen. Translators who provide translation services to ensure everyone has access to justice are afraid to do their job. I heard a story, and it's not just at the courthouse. This atmosphere of fear is prevalent among immigrant populations, even among citizens. I heard a story about a woman who went to work and was in a full-on panic because she didn't bring her passport with her. And she's like, what if I shows up and, they take me and I can't prove I'm a citizen? And the panic that this woman had reminded me, like my brain went to, do you have your papers in Nazi Germany? In the courthouse, we say liberty and justice for all. But if you've created this atmosphere of fear where not everybody feels like they're going to get justice, that breaks down, in my opinion, due process and American values. And so we can and should reform our immigration system in a way that is compassionate and consistent with American values, that provides a pathway to citizenship for people who are contributing to society by working and paying taxes and being productive members of the community. We can be compassionate and provide a pathway to citizenship to refugees who have come here, whether from Afghanistan, fleeing for their lives because they helped American soldiers, or coming from other countries because they are fleeing for their lives. We can have a compassionate immigration reform policy, but that is not what the Trump administration is doing.
Okay, we're talking with Jennifer McClellan right now, District 4, Virginia, our local representative in the House of Representatives. Ma'am, I'm going to disagree with you for just a bit. And again, I appreciate you coming on, and I always love talking to you, and we can have the free flow of ideas, and I'll respect yours and ask you to respect mine as well. I don't understand where all of this comes from, that there's people that are living in fear that are U.S. citizens. Do you have examples of someone like me? My last name's Herrera. I would be one that you would think that would live in fear with my last name and everything. Do you have examples where there's actually been a U.S. citizen that had paperwork, that had a license, that had ID, that was disappeared off the street and sent to Mexico?
So we have, based on reporting nationally, there have been incidences that have been documented of that. But ICE is not being forthcoming about how many and who. That's why I filed a bill last year asking ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to identify every instance where a U.S. citizen or someone who is here lawfully has been detained and deported.
So respectfully,
the administration has admitted that that's happened.
So respectful. Well, I mean, I've heard of Brego Garcia as one that a lot of people have pointed to, but do we have proof that that's actually happened, or do we have reports, or do we have somebody saying that's happened? Because again, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and I would think that the ICE officials would get that benefit of the doubt as well.
We have all three. I mean, there have been instances that the administration has admitted that people have been detained or deported. We know for a fact about children who were born here whose parents were undocumented
and
who have been deported. There's the story of the 2-year-old cancer victim. And so there have been incidences.
Well, but ma'am, respectfully, those aren't U.S. citizens. The children are because they were born here, but the parents are here illegally, correct?
In some of those cases, yes, but some adults who were born here,
yes,
whose parents, the president's trying to redefine birthright citizenship.
But that's not what's going on at the Chesterfield courthouse.
But When you see stories of this happening around the country, it doesn't just affect the cities and the localities and the people that it happens to. It creates fear among other communities. And maybe you and I, there are people who, let me back you up. Being here as an undocumented citizen is not a crime.
Ma'am, I'll beg to disagree. If you're here illegally, it's not it is against the law. We have a border. People can't walk across without permission, without paperwork. That's what an illegal alien is.
It is a civil infraction, like a traffic infraction.
So by that means, does the border not count? That anybody could just come across and it's a civil infraction, and the border means nothing?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
I think, would you agree that someone who runs a red light, that's unlawful?
Right.
And someone who commits burglary.
Yes.
They're different degrees, right?
I'd agree.
And would you agree that the punishment and the treatment they receive should be different? One is more likely to be held in jail before they get their day in court than the other, right?
I think we have statutes that'll show you the degree and what the prescribed penalty would be for breaking that statute.
Right.
Okay.
So I think what I'm saying is it's the degree of response. And what I have seen is a treating undocumented immigrants, some of whom came here with protected legal status, and then they had that status revoked.
But we're talking about the difference between U.S. citizens and non-citizens. If I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in California. I've got a birth certificate. I can prove my citizenship the way anybody else can. I have a certain status as a U.S. citizen. If you're born in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, you come across illegally, you don't have the same status as I do. You don't have the same rights and protections that I do. And you have a different degree of due process that we talk about due process all the time, but I can't get anybody to tell me what due process is.
So I have to disagree with you. Under the Constitution of the United States, under the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment, the due process rights are not limited to citizens. They are given to all persons in this country.
They are, but there's also different amounts of due process that you have.
No. Everyone is entitled to
due process. Yes.
Yes. Not different degrees of due process. The same due process. Under the Constitution.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'll let you. Go ahead.
So everyone needs to be given the opportunity to prove whether or not they are a citizen or here lawfully.
Agreed.
Before they are detained.
So if we were able to solve that, then I think would a lot of this go away. The consternation over people being detained to see whether they're citizens and they have a legal standing to be here.
Part of it.
Okay.
But let me add another thing. So with ICE agents who are wearing masks, who are not identifying themselves,
and we know why. We know why they do that, though. Correct. You understand?
I know why they say.
Well, ma'am,
I know why they say they're doing it.
Ma'am, we've seen that here. We've seen that here in Richmond, Virginia. Tony Pham, who's the former acting director of ICE, he showed me this video of people. He was doxxed. They came to his house to harass him and his family, his wife and kids. People showed up at his house. They doxxed him. This goes on. That's why these agents who don't have a lot of support from the public wear these masks, because they've signed up to do a job. They didn't sign up to have their wives and families harassed while they're at work because somebody doxed them because they figured out who they were.
I agree with that, but there are two consequences of that that we have to account for. Number one, there are people pretending to be ICE agents, engaging in predatory activity.
Then I would tell you that's 100% incorrect, and you and I should team up to expose those people and stop that. That's not tolerable. I don't think anybody on the right or anybody on the left or any American would like to see that. So when we have those examples, we need to make an example of those people and throw the book at them.
I'm glad to hear that. Here's the second one. If a government official violates someone's civil rights and that person wants to file a lawsuit or hold them accountable, under the law, they have to know their identity in order to be able to do that.
Would it have it on their detainer? Would it have it on the paperwork that says you were detained by this person, and there's a full report, isn't there?
If they're given access to it.
Okay, then I think we could take away a lot of that. But I mean, the fact that I've read that there's raids that go on at the courthouse. I've got sources that have told me, and they've been confirmed, that when ICE comes into the courthouse, they let the Chesterfield County sheriff know. They make that perfectly known. Here's who we're looking for. Here's why we're picking them up. They show them the paperwork, and they cooperate with the Chesterfield County. So sheriff's department. So when they come in there, it's not a raid. It's not we're running amok through the courthouse grabbing willy-nilly people. It's people that they have on a list. These are the people we're looking for. When they come in, here's who I'd like to talk to. And it's been perfectly organized. Cooperation. It's not just grabbing somebody willy-nilly off the street.
And I have been given information from defense attorneys and from public defenders that they are not being given the ability to talk to or see or interview or even know where their clients are. And that's a problem.
Well, so let's say I get arrested. Let's say today I'm driving down the street and I do something and I get arrested. Okay? Mm-hmm. Police will take me into custody as a U.S. citizen with all my due process, all my rights as a citizen. And they put me in handcuffs. They put me in the back of the squad car. They take me down to the jail. I get my phone call, but I don't get to stand there at that moment that I'm being arrested saying, hey, you need to talk to my lawyer.
Actually, you do. You have a right, and when they read you your rights, it includes you having a right to an attorney.
But not at the moment of your arrest.
Yes.
So if I get pulled over for a DUI, I can refuse to go with the officers unless I get to speak to my attorney at that moment.
You can refuse to talk to them, and once you are in custody, you have a right to talk to your attorney. But not are in custody.
Right, but not at that moment of the arrest, not at that moment I get to the jail, I get processed, I get my one phone call. Not at the moment of standing there when I have a defense attorney standing there going, hey, you can't talk to my guy. I'm like, sorry, we're detaining him. As they take him away, do I have the right to stand there and have my attorney talk to everybody and get to the bottom of this as I'm being taken away?
While you are detained, you have a right to speak to your attorney.
Yes, I get that. But at the moment that I'm picking you up at the courthouse, do those folks have that right to have representation at the moment of their detainment?
When they are first picked up and taken where they're detained, they have a right to speak to their attorney.
Yes.
And their attorney to speak to them. What I am saying is there are people who have been detained who their attorneys don't know where they are and have not been allowed to talk to them.
Forever, or just at that moment of detainment while they're going through processing after they're processed, are they then allowed to talk to them?
Some of them, they haven't talked to them at all.
Okay.
And they don't know where they are. And it's been days.
When I get, okay, but if I get held, again, I guess we're just trying to figure out when do I have that right to representation? At the moment of my arrest in the courthouse? Because that's why I see a lot of, hey, you can't take my guy and people interfering. We've seen that on television. We've seen that in the news. Or is it through the process I do have the opportunity because of due process that everyone has by stepping foot in the United States? Eventually I'll get to talk to my lawyer, maybe not when I want to, but eventually I think you and I would agree they do have the right to be represented.
We do agree on that. The exact moment when they have to let you talk to your attorney, I can't answer. But if you've asked for your attorney,
yes,
if your attorney has asked to speak to you, that your attorney has a right to speak to you when they ask. If they don't know where you are and are not being allowed to talk to you, and you are clearly detained, whether it's in Riverside or Farmville or Louisiana or Alligator Alcatraz, if your attorney cannot contact you and talk to you, that's a violation of your due process rights.
You know what?
Again, I think...
This has been great. So here's what I think you and I need to do. I think if when you have ICE, you have people impersonating ICE, I think that's one thing that you and I can agree with. I'd love to find out who those people are. I'd love to shine the light on that. I'd love to be able to talk about that and bring that to people's attention. And I'm right there with you. If that's going on, ma'am, that is wrong.
Okay.
I'd love to work on you. I think I think you have great intentions. I think we do want to make sure that we stand up for the rule of law. But I think this is an ongoing conversation that I'd be fascinated to continue with you.
Hey, look, it's very complicated. I understand that. And I think all I'm saying is we need to have a immigration enforcement policy that respects due process.
Yes.
That does not break down the trust and communication between communities and law enforcement, and that does not create a culture of fear in brown and non-English speaking communities.
But I would take offense. I would take offense that that all brown people are in fear of ICE. I'm not. I don't know any member of my family that are.
I'm not. I didn't say all. Well, I said there is fear in the community, and there are people who are afraid, who have not done anything wrong, but they're afraid. And fear is not rational. But I can tell you, my father, who grew up in the Jim Crow South, who saw the stories of lynch mobs, who was roughly, around the same age as Emmett Till. He never did anything wrong. He was never accused of doing anything wrong. But when he went out in certain communities, those stories stuck in his mind and he was afraid. Now, whether that fear is rational or not, that fear is happening. And that fear is causing people not to seek access to justice, not to report when they're a victim of a crime, particularly domestic violence. And it is making it harder to keep those communities safe. And if we can figure out a way to reform and enforce our immigration laws that doesn't create that fear, we should. That's what I'm saying. I
100% understand where you're coming from and respect you and appreciate that story. I'll share my story with you. On the flip side of this, okay. I'm the son of a migrant farm worker who didn't really learn to speak English until he went to school. I've actually worked in the fields. He had me work in the field, so I understood what breaking your back is. And I grew up in farm communities that were full of folks that were here legally and some that were here illegally. And I grew up around the ag industry. So I grew up around people that some were here illegally, some were here legally, some were migrants, some that didn't speak English. I grew up in those communities, ma'am. I do not fear ICE one iota. Neither does anyone in my family. And we have people that, that have lived that life and continue to live that life. So I 100% get what you're coming from, but I also hope that people understand that's not universal, that people from that background live in fear like that. I certainly don't. And ma'am, I'm about as close to it as you could be, that I spent time working in the grape vineyards and being the only non-Spanish speaking person there. And I grew up that way. So I think if we could just have honest conversations like this, we'll get to the bottom of this. I 100% agree with you. Due process has to happen. People have to be identified. And God forbid if there's an American citizen that was apprehended and taken away and thrown out of the country, we need to make sure we write that. We need to make sure we have rules and regulations, and we make sure that doesn't happen anymore. So I'm right there with you. for a lot of these things, I'm going to be right there at your side, no daylight between us, and we'll fight for making this right and clean a lot of this up. So I'm glad we had this conversation.
I am too, and I want to thank you for having this conversation, because I think a big problem we have in this country is that we're not having these conversations. We're not having them in Congress. We're not having them in a lot of communities. It's just, you started the program with it. It's people shouting at each other and not listening to each other. We have very different perspectives, but we can agree that we need a compassionate immigration enforcement policy that respects the American values of due process. And I have no doubt if you and I sat down together and tried to figure it out, we probably could. So I want to thank you for having me bring my perspective and sharing yours. And I wish this was happening more regularly in Washington.
Can I share something with you?
Mm-hmm.
I learned something from talking to you today, and I hope you have something that you took away from this conversation as well, and together we can work on making this a better country.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I learned something too.
Hey, listen, I always appreciate when you come on the program. I hope that you come away knowing that this was meant out of love for this country and nothing but respect for you and your positions. And I love hearing ideas and the free flow and exchange of ideas. And I hope that we get you back on again real soon.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Jennifer McClellan joining us here on News Radio WRVA.